Hi, and welcome to 2024. So, we're first episode for Drones on the podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the first drone that you probably got during Christmas. And if you've been naughty, you probably didn't get a drone. And we can look after you at the end of this episode. And I think Danny's going to share the details with you a bit later. So,
Stay tuned.
Danny,
Sean, how you doing, mate?
Good, mate. Good. So, Christmas, you got your first drone. And how do we get started, mate?
Mate, first off the bat, congratulations to everyone that got their first drone at Christmas. It's a glorious time to be in the air. A lot of people, they got, let's say, their Mini 3s, Mini 4s, Air 3s, Mavic 3s, if you're very lucky. If Santa was really nice to you, you got an Inspire, but, that's a very big
it's a very nice Santa in that case.
Santa had a nice budget. Mate, first thing you're going to do, I guess, when you get your first drone, you got to make sure you got all the accessories, right? Like, you have your SD cards. There's plentiful ones out there. You get your landing pads, your carry cases, or your batteries. There's a lot of stuff to buy. But thankfully, all the guys at D1, they have a lot of these packages ready to go. So you don't even have to go out and buy separate pieces. You get your 128 gig Samsung SD cards, or you get your shade covers for your remotes. Like there's a lot of cool stuff you can get out there.
Most definitely. The great service as well. So websites on there, so jump on and have a look.
Right on. And they definitely take you. Make sure you hit them up for some good pricing.
So what about ND filters? Is that something you'd want to get as a beginner, Danny?
Look, as a beginner, the ND filters can be really overwhelming. Personally, I like the brand Freewell because they're good quality, or very good quality, and they're not stupidly expensive. Where there's some brands out there like Polar Pro or Nissi and that, they're amazing quality, but you pay for it. Thankfully,
they look cool too, the Polar Pro stuff. I do love them.
They do. Like that nice gold ring around the top of the filters, it does look pretty schmick.
Yeah. And you pay a couple $100 extra for that, but it's...
Yeah, you really do. But look, ND filters are a whole nother topic of essentially being sunglasses for your drone, where you want to slow that shutter speed down. But for now, we'll leave this as nice and simple. ND filters are optional for now.
Yep. So basically, other than the drone and what you got from Santa, you probably need an SD card, a landing pad, and definitely a carry case, right?
Yeah, definitely. You want a carry case. Like, you're not going to chuck your drone in your backpack, are you? Like, I've seen people, throwing drones in the backpack. They come out with broken props, broken gimbals. Spend the extra $100 and get a good case. All my drones have cases. I'm sure you can see them behind me.
Yeah. Okay. So you've got the kit. What's next, Danny?
Well, we're all excited to go out and fly, right? That's the next big thing. But one thing you got to do before you fly is charge up your batteries. And they take at least an hour of battery usually. The bigger batteries like the Mavics, if you're not charging with 100 watts, they can take a couple of hours.
Yeah. And do you sort of recommend getting, some of the DJI drones obviously have the Fly More kit, which gives you the extra batteries, or you may have only got the one battery, right? So what are some of the circumstances you probably want those extra batteries, Danny?
Look, one battery will only get you so far, and when you're excited and you're out at the park or a beach, away from people, you're going to want to fly more than 20 minutes to half an hour. I'd definitely recommend getting the Fly More combos, especially for your first drone. It comes with all the extra accessories you're going to need, but like you do get your bags. You get some of them, you actually get your filters with the more expensive drones like the Mavic
3
Pro, I think.
The 3 Pro comes with the ND filters, yep.
Yeah. It definitely just spend the extra couple of $100, and also you're getting all those batteries and accessories cheaper than buying them separately.
Yep. So you've charged up your batteries or battery, depending on how good Santa was to you. And then what's the next step? You still haven't gone out. I want to get out, Danny. What's going on here?
Patience is a virtue. Next thing you got to do is charge up. Well, once all the drone batteries are charged, you got to connect your phone or your remote, whatever you may be using, to the internet and actually update the firmware. The firmware is essentially like your computer, like your iPhones, your Samsungs and all that. It's going to give you all the newest, best features, and also there's a lot of bug fixes. So first off the bat, before you even go out, once everything's charged up, update the firmware, but make sure you cycle through all the batteries as well, because they've all got different firmware built into them because they are smart batteries. And that should only take, the first time would only take maybe 10 minutes to do all that.
Yeah, and it's a lot easier to do that at home over Wi-Fi than trying to get a decent mobile signal.
Especially here in Australia when you're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, so we've charged batteries, we've upgraded our firmware. Obviously, make sure you've got an internet connection to do that. And I guess now we start going into the regulations, Danny.
Mate, that's the next thing before going out and sending it, because we all know you can't fly everywhere unless you're under a REOC.
Yeah.
Look, the main rules around drones, they kind of vary between countries, but there is the key rules of, say, not going over 120 meters or 400 foot. That way you have your separation between crewed aviation at 500 foot. Things like, say, the 30-meter rule to general members of the public, and always maintaining visual line of sight of your drone. So in case you lose connection, you can always fly it back to yourself. All these rules can be found at the CASA website for Know Your Drone. So if you go on Google, type in Know Your Drone, you'll have all the rules there. These are pretty easy to follow. But there's also a couple of other websites as well, say like OK to Fly, which I personally use for even commercial jobs. OK to Fly is great for showing the airspace, showing any emergency services in the area, and just all-round airspace awareness. So definitely worth checking it out. We'll put these two links in the description so you can actually click on them and check them out. It is a lot of information, but if you have any questions, chuck them in the comments. Send us a message on social media. We'll help you out.
And also the FAA, if you want to get started there, there's plenty of that links up on there as well, and we'll share that link as well.
So Sean, I guess you've charged up your drone, you've done all your firmware, you've got all your SD cards, you've got all your fancy accessories. What are you doing next?
Well, I think next is really working out where you want to take off and fly, right? So
I'm just going to do that in the lounge room, aren't I?
Well, we generally want to avoid that, right? Because one thing to know is when you're indoors, your GPS isn't going to work. So never a good thing to do when you first start flying drones. It does need at least 3 satellites, and you're not going to get that indoors. Very unlikely. So I guess going outdoors, if you've got a decent backyard, go out to your backyard, and you want to have your first flight there. If you don't have that and you live in an apartment or something, or constrained, then do some research about your local council or local areas, because every council has different rules, whether you can fly or not fly, and you certainly don't want to be getting into trouble with your council. So
not on your first flight. No one wants
not
that.
on your first flight. I know it seems very tedious, but we are really sharing airspace with so many different pieces of equipment in the air. So you want to make sure that you're doing all the right things. And it does teach you to sort of think through all of the different safety things you should be checking off as you develop your skills. So I think, look, obviously your backyard's your first thing. If you don't have that, then have a look at the councils. And there are quite a few councils now have drone-friendly parks that you can actually go and fly. So that's probably what I would do, Danny.
Awesome. Right.
Yeah.
You've just done your first flight. Congratulations. How do you feel?
Super happy.
Did you notice any beginner modes or anything when you started up your drone for the first time?
Yeah, I think with the minis, I definitely did. So I believe from memory comes with beginner mode enabled. So that's a good thing. Has a bunch of constraints that makes you much more comfortable. So you're flying sort of at the low altitude, quite a distance within your visual line of sight, so it's not going to fly, have a distance away from you. And I guess some tips around that first flight. So one of the things we still do today, all of our pilots, and I'm sure you do as well, Danny, when you take off the ground, is keep that drone at eye level, so you can actually push back and push forward, move it left to right, and understand what each of the different drones, what its behavior looks like, because one day it may not have that consistency that you're used to seeing. So no matter what size drones we fly, it's the same thing. And we'll keep adding to those safety checks over the next few episodes when we cover off drone safety checks. But that's one that I think is very useful. What do you think, Danny?
Right. Pretty much to a T. And while you're doing those safety checks, you're allowing that 10 seconds to a minute for the battery cells to actually equalize. So if you are going to get a cell drop, the drone may only drop from a meter high, not 30, 40 meters high or over a crowded area. You rather any issues will happen in the first few seconds. Most of the time.
If you haven't mounted a prop correctly, anything, it could be tired that day, whatever the reason is, it's better to be at 2 meters than 30, 40 meters and causing problems then.
Yeah. Hey, congratulations. You've done your first flight. You've got some probably cool photos or some pretty janky photos when you look back at them. I know I do. I look back on those hard drives and, oh, they're cringy.
So what else we got? So we've talked about councils and backyard. You also got the return to home. So that's a good one, I think, making sure when you set your return to home, because the drones that Danny talked about, the Mini 3, the Mini 4, pretty much any DJI drone, you can have your return to home. So it's actually, if it does have any issues, it's going to actually return to the position you've set it to. And you want to make sure it's set to the altitude higher than the tallest tree in that area. So again, a lot of these new ones have some very good obstacle avoidance, but I think you're better to play it safe and make sure it doesn't clip a branch on the way back. So that's a good one, I think, to remember as well. Just check that when you turn on your drone, because you do need to have your drone on. You can't set these things when you're inside your house. Unfortunately, you need to have the drone on. And then you can set all these settings that way.
Yeah. Just a good little note as well, all the newer Mavics and the firmware that recently came out with them, they actually show you augmented reality of when it's returned to home, the path it's going to take. So it's good little practice when you first start flying to actually, fly the drone 100 meters away, 30 meters up, and then hold down that return to home button after you've set your heights. You'll become aware of how it's going to behave when you go into return to home.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Most definitely.
Right on.
So we've any other tips? So we've got some good practices, I guess. Danny, do you want to
follow? I reckon if everyone follows those practices, they'll be professional pilots in no time.
Yeah, most definitely. So the practices we got, Danny. First one is check the weather.
Yep. Don't go flying
so
in the rain.
You're going, there's quite a few, whether you use Windy or any of your Apple phone or your Samsung phone, there's plenty of apps that tell you the weather condition. Certainly want to be looking out for wind and wind conditions, especially if there's smaller drones like a Mini 3 or Mini 4. And they do have their constraints on what the maximum speed meters per second each of them can handle. So you definitely want to keep an eye on that. What's the next one, Danny?
Ooh, what else we got here? We've done the beginner modes. We've done the taking off and hovering. Checking your airspace. So we've already mentioned about checking your airspace. OK to Fly is one of the best recommended sites in Australia. I can't remember the other sites from the US and the UK, but I'm sure we'll flash them on the screen for you. But you really need to maintain that we are uncrewed aviation against crewed aviation. We need to make sure we keep that distance from crewed aviation at all times. In the end, we still are an aircraft.
And one of the main reasons we keep talking about this is, like we said, it's shared airspace. And you want to keep out, obviously, for where the nearby helicopter pads are. Could be hospitals surrounding you. They will definitely have helicopter takeoff and landing areas and uncontrolled airports. So you want to make sure that you're not certainly going to be involved in any incidents down the track. So as you become more confident and be flying higher. So
like that incident that recently happened in, I'm pretty sure it was the UK. A drone ran into a helicopter, destroyed the propeller or damaged the propellers on the helicopter, 60 grand worth of damage. No one was injured, but he ran into a helicopter.
Yeah.
So 60 grand is a pretty pricey experience, and lucky no damage to people or other property.
Yep. So next one we've got is beginner mode, which we obviously touched on. So if that's available to you, make sure it's turned on. That'll certainly create some constraints for you in a positive way. So it'll work within that getting started and gives you little tips as well. So it keeps building that comfort for you.
Yeah, it's almost like a tutorial on a PlayStation game, right? Where you got to jump through a bunch of hoops first before you actually can go full send.
Yeah, for sure.
Right on.
And then we obviously touched on that whole flying at your eye level. So making sure you sort of check that, as Danny touched on, in case you've got a loose battery or a prop, keeping it at eye level, you can actually make sure you push forward and back and left and right and so forth. So you can make sure that drone's functioning as you would expect it to each time that you get in, you want to fly.
That's it. I reckon if people follow these tips, it's a good little way to start your drone experience. Hopefully on a positive. But speaking of positives, I feel like we have some positive news, Sean.
We do. So we said earlier, if you were naughty and you didn't get a drone, we've got this guy over here, the Air 3.
What a little beast. So we're going to be giving this away to one lucky subscriber or listener in the very near future.
So this is with the Fly More combo as well.
That's a pretty good deal. Oh,
so
I think Christmas. Do I want to sign up for it? Wish I could.
Well, so we definitely want to be, if you're not already, want to subscribe to our channel. Follow us on all the socials because we're going to announce what the actual steps are to win this. We're going to run it for a month. And unfortunately, you can only be an Australian listener and viewer. So that's the only condition, really. So I think we'll share all the links shortly and we'll announce it in a month. Pretty exciting.
We'll announce it. We also will have some terms and conditions on that just in case. So cover everybody.
Yeah,
so
that's pretty cool toy.
It is, and this giveaway was brought to you by D1 guys. So hit up their website, check them out. They're hands down the best drone shop in Australia. They'll take care of you really well. They've got the best pricing. They're an awesome team.
Most definitely. Cool, Danny. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me. Bring on 2024. There's a lot of flights to be had.